Hello, Western Civilization 105 class. So we are getting closer to the end of the semester. Don't forget, and we've been covering a lot, and we're coming up into um, going from World War One, briefly covering World War Two, and then going into the Cold War. Um, there are college classes at university classes that focus on just one of these conflicts, just the Russian Revolution, just World War One, just World War Two, just the Cold War, or maybe very specific slices, because we can cover a lot of history from all this, right? So we're getting some brief overviews. So I just want to remind us what we've been covering and looking into in the discussions. And I've been doing a mixture of giving you the information, but having you look at some primary sources and making, such as what Mussolini said about fascism, what Hitler's thoughts were from his Mein Kampf, and then just some discussions, and I think also something from Julius Evola. So we're seeing some of these historically complicated, problematic characters, but also looking at their own words and putting it in context to the grim history we see. I've also tried to expand the knowledge that you have of these historical time periods that you may have covered while you were in middle school and high school, but didn't get other exposures to. So you'll notice I could have focused much more on covering the Holocaust. And, I had to make choices on time. Like, we basically run out of time. I can only give you so much. I hope what you're seeing is that I did not ignore that topic. I expanded it into a broader set of context. So I do highlight the fact that I cannot understate how much destruction that does to European Jews, and the devastating effect that it had on them. But even though that was the focus, and it was, if you look at Hitler's sources, he was definitely most obsessed with them, and communism, and he saw that being Jewish and communist was synonymous, by the way. Okay, so for him, there really wasn't a separation of that, and so he could turn a discussion, if you're critiquing being a communist, that's also critiquing Jews. If you're critiquing Jews, you're critiquing communists. So he had that kind of in his propaganda list. But also, as many of you were surprised in your in the discussions, you saw in the links that Jehovah's Witnesses were also targets of the Nazi regime, that the Roma people, very, very understudied that. So the difference between the Jehovah's Witnesses, Jews, and the Roma people is Jehovah's Witnesses were given a choice. They could denounce their faith, say that they were wrong about their religion, that they see the light, and that they're going to be Aryan Germans working for the Führer and the party, and kind of do penance for their being misled. For Roma people / gypsies, and for Jewish people, they couldn't say, hey, I'm willing to denounce my community and I want to be a part of the thing. That wasn't even an option. So they were targeted for what they were, who they were, like, but not their actions. Their actions were irrelevant. It was just simply who they were. Pure racism, however you want to define it, and just targeting these communities. So I broadened the scope of that, and of course there was actually more than that. There were the gay community was targeted, folks with certain disabilities. I wasn't even able to give the full scope of this. I just wanted to open up the idea that there were multiple groups targeted alongside of the Jewish community in this circumstance called the Holocaust, and a very tragic set of events. Now, on top of that, I also throw the perspective of how Dresden is looked at, and the behavior of the Allies and the targeting of civilians, and the questions that get sometimes posed regarding that. And so, I looked at the discussions and like how everybody was looking at things. You're seeing these kind of surprises, like, oh, wow, there was a much more World War II. Maybe we now rightfully still pick sides, but you recognize it's not just like pure light versus pure darkness. And one of the things that we're going to look at the legacy of Churchill coming up is the fact that for Bengalis, the Allies were the evil ones, because at least in case of Britain, stealing grain and creating a famine on behalf of the Allies. So the lines between good and evil and which side, and also just something to remind everybody that when it comes to history and politics, who's good and who's bad may depend on where you live and as far as you're concerned in your own interests. So for example, let's say that one state is invading and killing and destroying another state, but that same state is the only one that provides you with a resource like oil. And then you have to rely on them, and then so they actually stick up for you, and you stick up for them, for your state. Or again, Bengal is just a better straightforward example. People in Bengal died of a massive famine, had one of the worst things happen to them, basically because of Winston Churchill. Their Hitler was Churchill. Now, am I saying that he's Hitler? I'll let you think about that. What I'm saying is, for them, that's what he was. Hitler did not cause them the problems that they had, which were severe. Massive death and destruction and a famine. So, I'm not trying to promote the idea of there's no right or wrong, but I am showing you that complication of that blurred in this world of state interest. And I think that you were all, when I looked at your discussions, I saw that a lot of you were seeing that getting that nuance and seeing the complexities of the world of how it really works and what to make of it. Now, last thing I just want to say, looking back at the ideologies that we covered, and I talk about this again, like socialism, communism, liberalism, conservatism, and now fascism. As we finish out the rest of this semester, I want you to think about how each of those ideologies play a role in the histories that you're looking at. And you could compare and contrast them. Where does nationalism fit into this? Where does liberalism fit into this or not? Where does Zionism fit into this or not? Where does, socialism fit into this or not? And look at how all of these ideologies come into the space of each history. And I don't know, just, keep in mind that I had you look over those things for a reason. And like I said, as you're investigating and looking through all of this, just think about what role they play in these. And if you feel free to add those into the discussions coming up as well. But I'll leave it at that. It's a very kind of wet and cold, very wintry feeling weekend, which we haven't had in Modesto for a while. I hope you're enjoying it, having a cup of coffee and all of that. So always, please also remember to join in for office hours on Zoom, like some of the students have. And every student that's met with me on Zoom has found that they're getting the information they need to keep their grades going where they need to go. So I always want to encourage you to do that. Have a great week, and we'll be in touch.